I left it at the entrance. Take care of it for a week." "What are you talking about?" Suddenly, my self-centered sister-in-law called me. She had put her baby in an eco bag and left it at our entrance, but I moved out yesterday. As soon as she heard my reply, my sister-in-law started shouting, "I'm overseas! Find it now!" I rushed to the house I lived in by car, but the baby was nowhere to be found. I thought I needed to call the police. With trembling hands, I took out my cell phone and was about to uncover a truly terrifying fact. I am Sarah, a 29-year-old woman caught in the whirlwind of unexpected events involving my sister-in-law Emily, her baby Ethan, and the tangled web of deceit that threatens to unravel our lives. I married David 10 years ago, and we lived together. We wanted children, but were not blessed with any. And before I knew it, I was 38. My younger sister-in-law Emily, who was 5 years younger, often took advantage of me. Her husband was a president, and my husband worked for his company. Using that to her advantage, it was commonplace for her to ask me to run errands, only a 10-minute drive from our house. Moreover, since she got pregnant, she called me more often, even making me clean the house and prepare dinner. Even though I loved taking care of people, I told my husband that she was being too selfish. But he asked me to keep looking after her for a while, saying, "I'll talk to her about it sometime. Sorry, but please help her out." It seems my husband was under her husband's influence, so I reluctantly went to Emily's house whenever she called. My stomach is heavy. "Hey, Sarah, don't just sit there, get the TV remote." "What?" Although she was only 3 and 2 months pregnant, her belly seemed to be showing more than it should. However, she was naturally plump, so I kept my unnecessary thoughts to myself. "Wouldn't it be better for a safe delivery if you moved around a bit yourself?" Don't give me advice when you've never been pregnant. That's exactly what they say when you argue. This baby is going to be our future son. What's wrong with taking good care of him? She slouched on the sofa, never dropping her arrogant attitude, which gradually wore on my nerves and stressed me out. But when I questioned whether the gender could be determined at 3.5 months, she flared up in anger. "You have an old brain. Nowadays, civilization has advanced so much that you can find out the gender right away." With Emily insisting as if it were the most natural thing, I didn't feel like arguing back and just listened to her complaints wearily. "You're just jealous because you can't get pregnant. It's really bad for the baby's prenatal education. If anything happens to this baby, it's your fault." Eventually, she started using the unborn baby to threaten me. It became suffocating to be with Emily, and I continued to go home, sighing, after quickly finishing what I needed to do. When I talked to my husband after returning from work, he soothed me, saying, "Just bear with it a little longer." Still, I felt uneasy as I went on with my life, because it was painful to keep feeling this way. I made excuses whenever Emily called and kept refusing her. Then Emily complained to my husband that I was being mean to her, which left me completely at a loss. Even if I said I was busy, she wouldn't listen and kept calling me. Eventually, I had to answer the phone, and she screamed in a piercing voice, "Sarah, is it okay if your brother's position at the company gets worse? You haven't forgotten that my husband is the president, right?" My husband was always gentle and kind, with the sole intention of not causing him trouble. I had no choice but to go to Emily's place. As time passed, Emily gave birth to a boy a month before her due date. Moreover, the baby weighed over 140. I thought, isn't he too big for being born so early? I wondered about that, but having never been pregnant myself, I assumed it might be possible and accepted it at the time. Emily named the child Ethan, and after she was discharged, predictably called me and had me take care of the baby. Think of it as practice for when you have your own. Fulfill your duty as a nanny. You might not even get the chance to have one. Despite being annoyed with Emily, I visited her home every time she called, thinking she must be struggling after just giving birth. Plus, the baby was just too adorable. "Ethan, you're such a good boy. Grow up healthy." Changing diapers for the first time and bathing him, none of it felt like a burden when I saw his face. However, 3 months passed, and Emily started dropping the baby off at my house. "What's going on? You're all dressed up." "I have a dinner with people related to my husband's work. I have to go with him, so you take care of Ethan." As she regained her strength, I realized how busy a president's wife could be, and I diligently took care of the baby. However, the frequency of Emily leaving Ethan with me started increasing. "Thanks for today. Isn't this too much? You're not just accompanying your husband, are you?" Right now, my husband is handling an important business deal, and I'm helping out. You should help too." Emily, raising her voice, forced the child on me and quickly went out. I thought, with that flimsy dress she's wearing, I wonder if she's any help. Despite my doubts, I couldn't just ignore the baby in front of me, so I took care of him as needed. However, that day was different. When I changed his diaper, Ethan had diarrhea. He was energetic and didn't have a fever, so I kept the room warmer than usual to keep him from getting cold. In the evening, when Emily came to pick up Ethan, I told her about it, and she confronted me loudly. "You useless thing! You did something to Ethan out of spite, didn't you?" I shook my head, denying it, just as my husband, David, came home. "What's all this noise in the entryway, David? I trusted your wife with Ethan, and she gave him diarrhea." Despite always using harsh words towards me, Emily's voice became meek, and she started crying. "I understand your feelings, but Sarah doesn't have much experience with child rearing. It might have just been a bit cold today. I'll apologize, so please forgive her." My husband defended me, but I was puzzled as to why I had to apologize when I hadn't done anything wrong, and I sent Emily and Ethan off feeling frustrated. While preparing dinner in low spirits, my husband suddenly became serious and pulled a letter-sized envelope out of his bag. "Sarah, there's something important we need to talk about. Dinner can wait. Please have a seat." As he spread out the documents on the table, the words he told me were hard to believe, especially since I hadn't imagined anything like it. However, understanding his firm resolution, I quietly nodded. A week later, while I was unpacking some boxes, Emily called. "I left a bag at your entrance, so take care of him for a week." "What? What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. It's my baby. Of course, you've already brought him inside, haven't you?" After hearing the full story, it turned out that since I was not at home, she had put Ethan in an eco bag and hung it on the doorknob. Hearing this, I panicked. "Wait a minute. We moved out yesterday. We're not going back to that house. Please go and pick up Ethan right away." However, Emily didn't believe me, saying, "What? Lying again?" But when I insisted it was true with a serious tone, she suddenly panicked. It turns out she had left Ethan 5 hours ago. Moreover, I was shocked to learn that she was currently on an overseas trip. Despite it being spring, it was still a chilly day without much warmth. "Go pick up Ethan now. Hurry up." More worried about the baby than angry at Emily's attitude, I immediately drove off. An hour later, I arrived at our old house and checked the entrance, but there was no sign of Ethan. No eco bag either. Why? I thoroughly checked the garden and asked the neighbors, but everyone just said they didn't know. No crying hurt either. What's going on? Feeling that it was futile to keep searching without any clues, I was about to call the police when my phone rang. "What? What did you say?" The content of the call was so shocking that I was left speechless. After ending the call, I was so stunned that I just wandered around in a daze until Emily called. "He was in the eco bag hung at the entrance, wasn't he?" He's not there. I can't find him anywhere." "Seriously, this is bad. If we don't find Ethan, my husband might divorce me. It will be your fault if we don't find him." Emily's voice was trembling so much that I could tell she was panicking over the phone. Since there was nothing else to be done, I told her I would report to the police and ask for help, but she adamantly refused. "Doing that will make it a big deal, and my husband will find out. Ethan's safety is more important than your reputation. Ethan is just a tool to extract money from my husband." Hearing this, I was stunned by her selfishness. Unconcerned about me, I could hear Emily talking with someone she was with. After a while, Emily lamented, "This trip is ruined. I couldn't get a flight today, but I'm coming back tomorrow. Don't tell my husband anything. If you find Ethan, contact me immediately. I'll do what I can." After hearing my response, Emily seemed satisfied and hung up the phone. The next day, as I waited for her at the airport, she appeared arm in arm with a man. Seeing me, she approached with a displeased look. "Sarah, what are you doing here? Did you find Ethan?" "I came to tell you something important. Ethan has gone somewhere you can't reach. It's too late." As I said this with a downcast and sad expression, Emily began to panic. "You're lying. What am I supposed to tell my husband? You useless thing. Find a baby that looks like him right now." "How can you say that? Are you even a mother?" Enraged and devastated, Emily suggested that any baby of the same age could deceive her husband. Overwhelmed with anger and sadness, tears started to flow. However, I quickly wiped my tears and firmly met her gaze. Instead of looking for a similar child, talk to this person. As I said this, a woman who had been hiding behind me, wearing her hood deep over her face, showed herself. Not just Emily, but the man with her started trembling. Yes, this woman was the wife of Emily's affair partner. The man was too shocked to move, and his wife confronted him, yelling, "You scum! I'll knock some sense into you!" He pleaded pathetically, "Please forgive me." But his wife was unforgiving, telling him, "Bite down hard," and then slapped him back and forth. The force was so tremendous that passers-by stopped in their tracks. She left the man who had collapsed while clutching his cheek, and then turned to face Emily. Then Emily quickly pled and began to speak rapidly. "Listen, don't get it wrong. We're not in that kind of relationship." "What? Hey Sarah, stop recording with your smartphone." Despite her attempt to deceive, seeing me holding up my smartphone to record the scene, Emily snapped back. However, I remained calm. "Then how do you explain this?" I pulled out an envelope I had brought with me, which contained emails between Emily and her affair partner, as well as cozy photos of them I found on social media. Emily, attempting to forcibly take these from me, glared menacingly. "Snooping around like that is the lowest. How did you find his wife's contact information?" I met his wife by chance. When I saw Emily's affair partner on social media, his face seemed familiar. After racking my brain, I realized he was the husband of the woman who works at my regular hair salon. He too was a hairstylist, but unlike his wife, who was successful and owned several shops and was skilled in a technique he was known for, he did not work and just played around. He was a typical husband sponging off of his wife. When I told his wife about Emily's affair trip, she said, "I've reached my limit. I'm joining in." She came with me. Usually gentle and kind, I was honestly surprised at how terrifying she could be when angry. Such a playboy hairstylist couldn't stand up to his wife and kept rubbing his hands together like a fly, repeatedly begging, "Please don't divorce me." Watching her steadfast refusal, I felt a strong resolve. Moreover, was Ethan born from the affair? What? Don't just make things up without proof. But he was born a month early and weighed over 140 ounces. That's too big. You've been fudging the weeks, haven't you? While saying this, I pulled out another envelope and showed her the documents inside. One was a maternal and child health handbook. Another document proved that Emily's husband was not Ethan's biological father. "You play dirty, but if I tear this up, it's like nothing ever happened." Emily snatched the DNA test results from my hand and tore them up on the spot, looking pleased with herself. She probably thought she could get away with it, but that wasn't going to happen. "You'd better talk directly to the person who gave me these documents." I turned my smartphone towards Emily, and she opened her eyes, and mouth wide as if she was about to scream. No wonder the screen showed Emily's husband. I wasn't recording. I was on a video call with Emily's husband. "Emily, you lied about going to your parents' house and deceived me." "Well, that is... so you know," she stammered, not making any sense in response. Standing in front of her, I slowly began to speak. "Listen carefully. I'm going to explain everything one by one. A week ago, her husband, suspecting something, had requested a DNA test between himself and Ethan. After finding emails between Emily and her lover at the same time, he lied about going on a business trip for a week to monitor her actions. Emily, not knowing this, immediately contacted her lover by email and booked an overseas trip online in a rush. She didn't even think to clear her browsing history on the day of the trip. After placing Ethan in an eco bag and hanging it at the entrance of the house I was living in, Emily skipped off to the station, humming a tune. Her husband followed her and took care of Ethan. If he had been left at the entrance for over 5 hours, who knows what could have happened. "What? So Ethan is alive?" "Yes, he's with me now." The call I was about to make to the police when I couldn't find Ethan was from Emily's husband. Surprised, but eager to understand the situation fully, I immediately went to his house. Ethan was full of energy, flapping his arms and legs as he played with a rattle. While hearing about the past events, I remembered that despite being born a month early, he weighed over 140 ounces at the time. I reluctantly accepted it, but I indeed thought it was strange. With Emily's husband's permission, I searched through Emily's belongings and found her maternal and child health handbook. Looking at its contents, I discovered that Emily had falsified the baby's weeks. Why did Emily do such a thing? Looking back at the actual timing of her pregnancy, it was exactly when her husband was away on a long business trip for about 2 months. Therefore, he couldn't be the father of the baby. Realizing that she was pregnant with her lover's child, Emily thought she could deceive everyone by fudging the birth month, especially since the baby turned out to be unexpectedly big. That's when I became suspicious. Then the lover, now exposed, even about the child, began apologizing profusely to his wife. However, his wife coldly said, "You'll have to live on your strength from now on," and slammed a divorce paper down on the spot. As she kicked her crying husband and walked away, there was a refreshing certainty in her stride. Meanwhile, Emily's husband did not remain silent. "Of course I'm divorcing you. Go be with that man." "No, I just liked his face. He has no money. You were with me just for the money, right?" Caught in the truth, Emily choked up. "You said Ethan was just a means to get money from your husband. Don't spout nonsense. I heard about yesterday's phone conversation from Sarah. I had recorded everything to prevent Emily from denying it later." Emily's husband had been silently listening to our conversation until then, his face flushed with deep furrows between his brows. Confronted with the unexpected truth, Emily seemed to tremble slightly. But then, as if remembering something, she peered into her smartphone screen. "If Ethan is okay, then it's all good, right? Besides, even if we're not related by blood, I gave birth to him, so he's as good as your child." Both Emily's husband and I inadvertently exclaimed, "What?" at her pathetically selfish justification. Thinking she had cleverly dodged the issue, Emily put her hands on her hips, looking smug. But then, Emily's husband said, "This is the end," and abruptly hung up the phone. "What are you going to do about this? I did everything you told me to do, didn't I? Didn't you like it?" She tried to call her husband from her smartphone, but he had blocked her calls. More importantly, Emily. "Did you know that leaving Ethan in an eco bag and going out is a crime?" As she shook her head vigorously, I showed her what kind of crime it was on my smartphone screen, and she suddenly began to tremble and collapsed on the spot. "Emily, this is goodbye for us. Farewell." After giving her a cold look, I walked away feeling a chill. When I turned around, Emily's eyes were bloodshot, and her brows twitched as she made a terrifying face. "I'll tell David this happened because you moved without telling me. It's incredible how selfish one can be, never once thinking about Ethan. This is no time to cry. Go pick up Ethan right now. If I'm getting divorced, I don't need the baby. What kind of person are you? I will never forget what you just said. Ethan will never go back to you, no matter what." Having declared my separation from my hopelessly awful sister-in-law, I walked away with a firm resolution in my heart. Later, I reported the incident of Emily abandoning the baby to the police. Even though he was quickly protected, the act was deemed too cruel, and Emily was severely reprimanded by the police. Emily ended up being divorced by her husband and disowned by her own family, becoming utterly alone. She was sued by her ex-husband for child abandonment and tricking her child's father, demanding $30,000. She and her lover had to borrow money to pay the settlement, and because they borrowed from a dubious company, she ended up working in a shady place to repay the debt. I resolved to raise Ethan as my child. When I told this to my husband, he happily agreed. Oh, I almost forgot to mention, I am also expecting a new life. I will raise these children carefully so they can live freely and happily. In the conclusion of the story, Sarah reflects on the tumultuous events that have unfolded, ultimately finding resolution and closure amidst the chaos. Emily's deceitful actions and selfish motivations have led to her downfall, resulting in her isolation and legal repercussions. Meanwhile, me and her husband David embraced the opportunity to raise Ethan, Emily's abandoned child, as their own. Despite the challenges they faced, I and David look forward to welcoming their own child into the world, determined to provide a loving and nurturing environment for both children. As they move forward with hope and determination, I find solace in the newfound sense of family and purpose, leaving behind the turmoil of the past and embracing the promise of a brighter future. Thanks for watching. How did you find the story? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more awesome stories like this. Your feedback and support mean a lot.